Okay, so today I wanted to continue on with an idea that was brought up in the talk that we watched from Mr. Davis last night. Towards the end of that discussion he was having, he was talking about, in a sense, having a vision of your life. And he also made it very clear that he wasn't saying that you can magically control all aspects of your life simply by imagination, but that by having a vision of your life, there's a greater chance of the possibility of that experience happening for you. I've experienced that throughout my life, where I've sat down and after meditation, I had a sense of, okay, what would it be like if this coming year, these next coming years, would play out this way, if my work would go this way, if my relationships would go this way, if my health would go this way. And what I found is if I was able to spend time in meditation, getting as calm and clear as possible, and then after that meditation passed, had a sense of imagining, wondering what that would be like, most of the time, that experience somehow would happen. Now, not exactly probably as I would imagine it, but certain aspects of it would come to pass. And I've thought about this a lot because when I interact with people who are interested in meditation and Kriya yoga, oftentimes they don't really have a vision of what it might be like if they were fully awake. They don't have a vision of what it would be like if their meditation was working well and they were more peaceful. They were more knowledgeable. They could pick up a book like Kriya Yoga Vichara or The Science of Self-Realization and understand what it was saying. It's almost as if there's some kind of block or screen over their consciousness such that they can't get beyond identifying with who they think they've always been. So we have to spend some time, and that's why I did this in the meditation this morning, spend some time considering, number one, what is the vision of our life? And number two, what is, or maybe it should be the other way around, number one should be, what is the vision of ourself if we were aware, awake, knowledgeable, able to meditate well, understood the yogic philosophical principles? What would it be like if that were true? And then, if I was able to live my ideal life, what would that look like? What would that look like? And to tie it back into what we were discussing a few days ago, in a sense, that is having a vision of what you want your life in eternity to be like. You don't want to waste time. Think about it. When you've had situations come up and you did not want to be in that situation, and you had something more, I don't want to use the word enticing, but something more attractive, something more wholesome, something more supportive of you, and you had the option. I can continue to waste my time in this situation, doing something that is not a part of my path, that is really not of interest to me at all, that is not part of my higher work or my higher calling, or I can put that aside and say, sorry, I'm going to go over here and do this thing. I'm going to go over here and do this, which is more supportive of what I want to be doing in this world, of what I want to be manifesting, of what I want to be expressing in this world as a unique, individualized aspect of this infinite consciousness. And what you find is, if you are able to start making the choices of, no, this is what I want to be doing, then situations and circumstances actually, in some way, may start supporting you in that regard. Whereas before, you were interacting with individuals that did not have a vision, that really just wasted a lot of time talking endlessly, like Roy said in the video. And now you find yourself with people who, they're happy to help you. You know, they want to support you in your work. They want to be part of that life where you are, again, expressing that clearest, most heart-centered or uppercase S, self-centered aspect of yourself. You find that that is natural for you. So we have to have some kind of vision of what would that be like. Now, when we think about what it would be like to be enlightened and awake and acting that way, if you took some time to forget about your past and your personality, and you're in a situation and you have an option here. You can do something which is not conducive to clarity, which is not conducive to peace, which is not conducive to doing the work you're meant to be here, or you're here to do. Or if you're not trying to think about yourself as this small little self again, but you're thinking as though I am an enlightened, awake, clear person, wouldn't you know what to do? I mean, you've been here long enough. You've had Roy as an example, other people as an example. When you really think about how he lived his life, or how other successful people live their lives, if you really just thought about it, wouldn't you know what to do? So what's the problem? You just simply have to make the choice, right? And then oftentimes what comes up is the reason we don't make choices that are supportive of us is because we're afraid of hurting someone else's feelings, maybe, right? Or we're afraid of making someone else uncomfortable. Now, you don't want to make people uncomfortable just because that's who you are and you enjoy that, but you living your life, being true to your spiritual path, being true to what is enjoyable for you, if that makes someone uncomfortable, that's not really your fault. That has nothing to do with you. It is their choice to be hurt by the fact that you want to live a good life, right? So oftentimes we have to really admit to ourselves that it is okay to choose what is in our highest and best interest, because when we really get down to it, especially people who are here, you know what the right choice is. And we're not talking morals and righteousness. We're simply talking about the appropriate thing to do. And it comes down to knowing, well, what do you want? When people say to me, I want to be awake, or I want to meditate well, or I want to be liberated in this lifetime, immediately I think, fantastic. I'm so glad, because I believe them. Because when I said that, I'm pretty sure I meant it. But then I start to watch how people behave, and I start to recognize that they really don't mean what they say. Oh, I want to meditate well. Okay, well, here's what you have to do. Oh, I can't do that. It's too hard. I was having a talk with one of the participants here who was very athletic and driven and did things like, I guess, the Ironman, and it got me thinking about people who are successful in life. That's the reason why I wrote in Kriya Yoga Vichara at the very beginning. This is not the reason I wanted this book here. It's another question someone asked. But there's a reason I wrote in the beginning. Let's see, where is it? Essentially, I start out by saying, if you have the same kind of dedication, and if you have the same kind of drive to wake up and to be clear that a successful business person has to have a successful business, or that a professional athlete has to be a good athlete, and you get the idea. If you have that same kind of drive and that same kind of vision, then you will do very well on this path. Because people who are successful in business, they typically either don't make mistakes in business because they know what to do, or if they make mistakes, they learn from it and don't make that mistake again. People who are successful athletes, they figure out how to train well, and they train well, and then they become successful in that. For a while, probably about 10 years ago, I actually thought about giving up teaching meditation and Kriya Yoga and astrology because I got very much into training with kettlebells, and I was working with people, teaching them how to do that, and I thought, this is what I need to be doing, because no one who comes to me to learn how to do kettlebells says, oh, I don't want to do that. Can you lift that up for me? No one says that. I tell them, do this exercise, and they say, great. And they go to town, and they get stronger. But it's a funny thing. in this kind of realm where people say they want something, and then I say do this. Oh well, that I can't get up early. I really enjoy my family and my friends, and I have to give my full time and attention to them. They say one thing, but they don't actually want to do the work. If you want stronger arms and a stronger chest, you just do push-ups, right? If you want to have clearer awareness, you figure out a way to give your full attention to your meditation technique, because that's training you to hold your awareness in a spot, to focus there. And it's hard in the beginning, just like someone, when I first started trying to do push-ups, I couldn't do more than 5 at a time. But eventually I got up to doing 100 a day. How did that happen? I did a little bit, I pushed myself, I backed off, I kept going until it was a goal that was achieved. The same thing was true for myself, at least in meditation. When I first learned to meditate, I could barely sit still for 7 minutes. Now, what I just said was, I could barely sit still for 7 minutes. I wasn't even meditating. What I was doing was sitting on a chair, staring at a candle flame, and my goal was, don't move, right? And so now, 20 years later, I can sit for an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, and I do it because I've got 20 years of experience of trying to do that. So I also had a vision that I wanted to be able to do that. I had a vision. I had read Autobiography of a Yogi. I'd spent time with Roy Eugene Davis. I had had glimpses of what it was like to experience clarity, and I wanted to make that more pronounced within my life. So, just like, as I mentioned the other day, when I first met Roy, while it was a stupid thing to say, the first thing that came out of my mouth was, when can I learn to teach this stuff? Again, I had absolutely no idea what I was saying. Just like for the first 10 years of actually practicing Kriya Yoga, and after being ordained after 5 years, holding the vision, I would love to have the opportunity to run a meditation center. So I moved to Asheville. Roy says, let's set up a meditation center. I eventually realized I definitely do not have the patience for running a meditation center, but I had that 10-year-long vision of, I would love to have the opportunity to work in that way. After that passed, I recognized that I needed to continue with my own personal practice, as that was the most important thing. And then the vision occurred to me, I would love to work with people all over the world who are personally interested in waking up, meaning they don't necessarily want to go to a meditation group, or they don't feel they have to have the support of other people. They just simply want the information, and they want to know how to apply the information so that they can lock themselves in their little closet or their cave at home and do the actual work. Now, my experience up to that point was that was sort of impossible. But my vision was, no, that would be a wonderful thing to do. And it was, 3 years ago when it occurred to me, well, let's start this Kriya Yoga apprenticeship, where people from all over the world can tune in, once a week to a class, apply that, get into it, experience it. And that was as far as I took it. And then a year after that, I thought, well, wouldn't it be wonderful if they could come together once a year here at CSA, hopefully. I didn't really know how that was going to go over, but I thought, wouldn't it be wonderful if we could come together for a retreat personally, just to have that direct experience, but then they go away and they do their own thing and they have their own development. And so I brought it up to Mr. Davis. At that time, from what I remember, he told me that there was only one other CSA minister or CSA representative who actually brought people to CSA and did this, what we're doing here, with that individual leading the retreats. So I thought, this isn't going to happen, because I was no longer an official CSA representative, even though I was still very close to Mr. Davis. I thought, it's not going to hurt to ask. What's he going to do? Say no? It's all right. He said no to other things, and it didn't kill me. Mm-hmm. So I brought it up, and he said, that sounds fine. He says, why don't we just do that, at the end of the retreat season, which is also interesting, because one of the things that stuck in my mind about Sri Yukteswar is that he had celebrations, or he would create these holy festival things for his students around the autumn equinox. And I love autumn. Autumn's my favorite time of year. So I thought, wouldn't it be wonderful if we could do it around that time? Well, when did this retreat start? The first day of autumn. So then, we had 1 week of retreats, and I thought, well, we need 2 because there's a 2-year course here. I brought it up to him, and he said that would be fine. So this is just an example of very simple things on my own sort of path where I had a vision of a possibility. And a lot of it I really didn't truly think was going to happen, but I kept contemplating, well, that would be interesting. And then here we are. So that's true for you in your spiritual life, but it also needs to be true for you in your daily life. Too many people wander around without any kind of direction, and they wonder why they never get anywhere or nothing ever seems to change for them. And Mr. Davis was talking about how if you've got work and it's good and it's supportive, that's fine. If you're in a work situation which is hard on you, emotionally difficult for you, and you kind of dread going, he said that's not really that healthy. That you should try to have some kind of possibility, vision of a better circumstance for you, because it is okay to enjoy your life. That's not a problem. So in our daily life, we need to consider, where are we, and are we able to live a life that is freely expressive, and can we even imagine that that is true? So you have to start with the fact, can I imagine that it is true in the first place? Because if you can't do that, you're going to have a hard time with the rest of it. If you can start to imagine that it's true, then you can start to have a sense of, what would my ideal situation be like? And then you start taking actions towards moving in that direction. Now, I'm not trying to, again, recreate what so many people say, that you can bring up this grand vision of your life and it's going to happen just like you think it is, and you're going to have the perfect job all the time. Because I know way too many people in Asheville in particular, because they're very into that have spent 15 years trying to manifest some kind of life which is just beyond possibility for them. Right. And so what they've been doing is spending all this time trying to manifest something beyond possibility, when they could have been focusing on developing themselves internally, developing contentment, and then working towards something that allows them to simply just be happy, to do what they need to do, mainly so that they can do their spiritual practice, because that's the whole point of it all. Lahiri Mahasaya, he was a clerk, one of the greatest teachers in the Kriya Yoga tradition, worked all day long as a clerk. There's nothing wrong with being a clerk. Hopefully it's not coming out that way. But he was a clerk, and he was able to, and he had 5 kids. And supposedly he didn't even have, I think 5 kids, a lot of kids. More kids than 1, so it's a lot. He had a big family, and he actually didn't even start his family until after he met Babaji and began practicing this stuff. So it wasn't like he was a householder, he was doing his work, he had all these children, and he had been practicing this whole time in this way. He was very spiritually inclined, and he meditated, but then he met Babaji. He became a teacher of this Kriya Yoga tradition, and then what did he do? 5 kids. Well, what is he thinking? But he's the example of, he worked such that he had the resources he needed, such that he could meditate well, study, and even teach Kriya Yoga. Now that's a good life. I think that's a good life. Mm-hmm. So we want to be able to have the vision that our life is organized, that we can be harmonious with our day-to-day experience, and that provides a good foundation to our spiritual practice. That's the key. And of course, things will happen. People will come and go in your life. Sometimes you'll have more money, sometimes you'll have less. Sometimes you'll go through a challenging situation with a family member. But when you when you are stable in your spiritual practice, then you recognize that that's okay. That's just part of this whole process working itself out. But the question is, can you see that as a possibility for you? Can you see that as a possibility for you?